just have to. Josh,
Hey
what is
there.
going on? How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you? Can you hear me okay?
I can. Likewise on my end.
Everything sounds great.
Man, oh man. Thank you so much, first and foremost, for taking the time tonight. I am so excited. Like I was saying, I think maybe even my kind of introduction to some of your work was the Drag Me to Hell cover. And I'm excited to just, really hear your story and hear, where maybe as a young man you came from drawing or interest in artwork and getting to there. So first and foremost, thank you for joining us tonight. I really appreciate the time.
Well, man, thanks so much for having me on your show. I've seen some of your videos, and I can tell you're a real movie lover. And to meet other guys that have such an appreciation for not only the movies but the movie art, it's great. It's
Mhm.
fantastic. So, and it's funny. I didn't realize there was a community out there of people that they still love physical media. They love talking about the art that's on the physical media, and you know, uh, kind of reliving some of these older movies, whether it be the horror genre or the action genre. So it's a lot of fun, man. So thank you so much for having me here.
Dude, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think that was, having the community that's on Instagram is one of those things where it can be a little niche, but once you find that, or you find a couple of pages that are posting, their collections or different things, I mean, people are still out there hunting that stuff. And I was just
Yeah,
reading an article earlier today about how streaming services are having a hard time, and I haven't, more and more people giving up on their subscriptions and all that. And it's like, well, I mean, we still have some pretty solid things. Places putting out movies. Like, fuck that. I
right.
don't want to stream it. I'd love to own it. I'd love to have the
Yeah,
artwork. So,
yeah.
um, as far as your story, so this is where I love these opportunities, and I'd love to hear from maybe your earliest memory of, maybe it was the art, maybe it was movies. When you were a kid, tell us about young Josh, and and some things that were really piquing your interest that may be along these
Yeah,
lines.
yeah. I mean, I was kind of your average kid that grew up late '70s and the '80s, and so superheroes were everywhere. So I was really attracted to superheroes and comics and cartoons, and then my parents started taking me to the movies as a kid, and one of the very first movie posters that I remember that I was like I couldn't stop staring at was sorry, my earphone keeps coming out. Was
Uh,
the poster to the Empire Strikes Back. I'm standing
oh,
standing in line, looking at this, and it's just I couldn't stop looking at it. And so then after that, whenever I would go to a movie, and this is when you would have to actually stand in line to buy your ticket and go in.
mhm.
And I loved looking at the movie posters standing in line. And then when you got into the theater, I loved just like I would just go around. My mom and dad are like, "Where are you going?" I'm like, "Just give me a second." And I'm just looking at, some of the artwork. So it started when I was really young. I didn't really know what I was looking at or anything. I just thought it looked cool. And
Mhm.
as I got older, the two places that I loved to go as a kid, the video store, because you had all these videos in the box covers, just wall to wall, and I could
uh,
just spend hours in there just looking at the art, and then trying to find a movie that you liked.
uh,
And the comic book store, again, you had all the covers,
yeah.
all laid out, and I could spend hours looking at that stuff. But so I grew up, trying to draw, and actually my mom got me into drawing. We lived. My dad got a job when we moved to like northern Missouri, and so we would be snowed in. We were living in it. We were like living in a little trailer park. We'd be snowed in, and my mom was like, "Well, we got to figure out something to do." So we'd start drawing, and it just kind of
Man.
progressed. Yeah, it progressed from there, man. Trying to draw a lot of superhero stuff. I did that all through grade school, high school, and I wanted to be a comic book artist and all this stuff. And then I got ready to go to college, and I was all ready to go to art school. I'm like, "Mom, Dad, I want to go to art school and become an artist." And my dad thought I was crazy. Uh, but then I also got really into swimming, and so I wanted to swim in college, and I was like, trying to a place where I could do both. And then I found a school that had a good swim team, and they had a really good graphic design department.
Hmm.
And I had never heard of graphic design, at this point.
Hmm.
I didn't know that was a thing. And I'm like, well, this looks pretty cool. I get to do art and I get to, do athletics. So that's what I did. And after school, or I'm sorry, a year before I graduated, a buddy of mine moved out to California, and he's like, "Man, you got to come out here. I see job ads for what you want to do all over the place." And so I visited, and it's just, it's if you like movie stuff, that's where you go. And
Uh-huh.
I saw the opportunity there, and I moved out after school, and actually I met another guy at a pool because I kept up swimming, and he worked in the industry, and just kind of introduced me to some people, other people that worked in the industry, and I'm really leaving out a lot of detail here. I don't want to bore you or
Do
your audience.
No, this is great. No, 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 this is awesome.
Yeah, but it was just, meeting people here and meeting people there, and then time would go by and you would come back together and meet again, and opportunities would come up, and I happened to be in the right place at the right time, and was able to get a job doing VHS covers, for a guy.
Oh man.
Yeah, he had his own sound stage, and he was creating instructional videos for like Photoshop and stuff like that. This is like in the late 90s. So he was ahead of his time. But I was doing these VHS covers for him, and then I got a job doing VHS covers for an agency, and then that led to a job at Warner Brothers, and then that led to some other agencies, and it just, I actually took some time off from the movie industry for a while, from entertainment. Um,
Okay.
I wanted to try corporate design. That did not last long, man. I had like withdrawals. I was like, I don't know why I'm so depressed. What's going on? And my wife and I had a long discussion about it, and I left the corporate design world and went tried to get back into entertainment. And because of the connections and people that I had met years ago, I ran into a guy that he worked for an agency when I was at Warner Brothers, and him and some people from his agencies would come into the office sometimes, and so we got to kind of know each other. He was working with a guy that was next to me, and after I decided to get back into the entertainment stuff, he had started his own company. We randomly ran into each other at an airport one day, and just reconnected. And he gave me a shot to get back into the industry, and it's through that agency that I've been able to work with Shout and do some of the covers
Oh
that
man.
you've been seeing. So I feel like I need one of those walls with like the red string going from here and going to there, kind of detailing out. I tried to really summarize that real quick, but
Yeah,
it
yeah.
it was it was kind of a crazy road, and I didn't even set out to be in like doing movie posters and DVD packaging. It's just how
Yeah.
it happened. But
Man.
I feel like, looking back, I spent so much time as a kid staring at movie poster art and staring at movie art. I feel like maybe that's exactly, where I was supposed to be. So it kind of all worked out.
Man. And it's beautiful too. Like I guess, and I don't want to go too far back, but you'd mentioned, the earlier memory of you sitting down and drawing with your mom. Did she have any sort of, yeah, like school knowledge, or was this more of kind of like a tracing type thing and just studying as you were going, just out of being snowed in the house?
That's exactly what it was. I was,
Hmm.
like 3 or 4, and she was just trying to keep me entertained, and
Hmm.
sit down and say, "Hey, let's try and draw Batman," and we would try to draw Batman, and it started with that, and I kept drawing as a kid, and wanting to get better, and started like looking at a lot of book art because I thought it was so cool. It's so dynamic. And, you got these huge, you know, uh, powerful dudes, and they're fighting monsters and they're fighting aliens, and just all this crazy stuff can happen.
Uh,
And I would try to emulate that. And then whenever I saw a movie poster that really caught my eye, it was just I loved it. I was like trying to figure out how they did it.
uh,
But it was just one thing, led to another, but I kept drawing all my life. And it wasn't like I was drawing hours and hours and hours a day. But whenever I could, I would draw. And then I started taking art classes in I think I started my sophomore year of high school. And
Oh, okay.
just I,
Wow.
that's when like I was like, okay, I love this. I want to try and find a way to do this as a career if I can. And I just got lucky enough or blessed enough to be able to do it. And I got to tell you, the last few years, man, I've seen a big trend happening in the DVD and the Blu-ray, cover stuff, and that is going back to an illustrated style. You
Oh
know,
yeah. Yep.
especially when I got into the industry, it was all about photography and Photoshop using the photos, and photo composites. And I was like, oh man, I really want to draw some stuff, but that just wasn't what the industry was looking for at the time.
Right.
And you still had those outliers like Drew Struzan and people like that who were still doing some work on certain projects, but the amount of illustrated artwork really it got less and less. But for me, I noticed within the last like 5 years, man, it is just like you're seeing so much more new illustrated artwork.
Hmm.
And what's so cool is it's new illustrated artwork for these older movies. And I just think
Yeah.
to me,
Yep.
that is like the funnest project to have is like give me an older movie, something that I can kind of remember watching as a kid, and then
uh,
say we have to create new art for it. It's so
yeah.
fun. It's so cool.
I can agree too. I feel like the 90s and early 2000s, that was very much a thing of like you had a Scream movie and it was just all of the characters kind of piled on each other. And,
Right.
going back in some of these like special editions that are coming out now and they're illustrated or they're hand drawn, I mean, it's like, it is so awesome. It is so much fun
Yeah.
to go back and see that stuff
And
or
it
have it.
adds to the collectability of that
Oh, yeah.
steel book or that collector's edition or whatever. So yeah, it's
Hmm.
really cool. I hope this trend lasts for a while. you
I,
know?
I mean, it certainly seems, that way. And I feel like even when that was happening with like let's just say with DVD. I think that was kind of relevant around that time with like some of the movies that were coming out, and you would see artwork, and it was just kind of that fast pass. There wasn't a slip cover or
Right.
anything. I feel like even then, friends of mine and different buddies that were in like movie clubs or whatever, they're like, man, I just really wish they'd do something more with the artwork. And lo and behold, it comes back. It comes first full circle, and I feel like it's
Yeah.
a very fierce thing right now.
Yeah, I do too. Like I said, I was so happy to find this community of people that are just, they love it just as much as I do. And I'm really fortunate. I work with some other designers and they love it as much as I do. And even
Oh yeah,
the owners of my company, everybody cares about it.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it means something, you know, uh, and it's a lot of fun when we get to have discussions about how we think we're going to handle this, or how are we going to kind of solve this puzzle. Because one thing that's interesting about some of these titles is a studio will come to us and say, okay, we want an illustrated piece for this movie, but you can't show anybody's faces, you can't show any actor's likeness. And I'm sure that's
Mm,
got something to do with some contractual or legal thing or something like that.
sure.
And so to save the studio time and just maybe going through red tape, they're just like, don't show anybody's faces. And at first you're like, man, how are we gonna come up with a design without showing the main person's
Yeah.
face? But but then it kind of like it's a challenge. It's like how can we come up with something that's iconic without showing the actor's face, but still make it where the people that know this movie will recognize this artwork. So
Yeah, yeah.
it becomes a challenge, and it kind of it just kind of helps that design brain to start kicking in and trying to figure out how to solve a problem.
And it's funny that you break it down like that too, because I've never put it, side by side with even listening to filmmakers talk about making a movie and saying, well, what we're trying to shoot is $30,000 and what we have a budget for is five. So it's like we're gonna have to use some imagination here because we're not gonna be able
Yeah,
to pull off the effect that we want. And
right.
that's really cool that you break it down like that too, because having some of those constraints, I think much like a movie, or somebody like Sam Raimi with like the Evil Dead series is kind of like
Yeah,
a good, consummate to that of like we're going to try to do what we can with what we have and use our imagination and I mean that's awesome because like I think the example that you're given, the Drag Me to Hell cover that we have here,
exactly.
the
Yeah.
same exact thing. Now, along with the illustrative, I guess I wanted to ask about your approach with font.
Hmm.
Did at any point did you mess around with sitting down and doing it? Like I guess I'm always drawn to that too because I think that font it can be something that can also make or break something that can
Absolutely.
have a likeness. So what's
Absolutely.
been your experience there?
Yeah, you have the font is a graphic. It's another piece of the artwork, and you have
Mm,
to really take that into consideration. And every project, depending what that project is, the font's going to be a little bit different for every project. So, yeah, whenever we're doing designs, we take that into consideration. I mean, just the other day we were working on a project, and you know, our account executive was in the meeting, and she was like, I just don't feel like our fonts are designed enough on this yet, and she was right. So we had to go back and we like really kind of focus more on the titles and things like that, so that it matched our designs better. So we try to be very aware of, is this font matching the artwork? Is it at the same level as the artwork is, and does it feel like that movie? So we definitely keep that in mind.
hmm. Man, and I mean, it definitely shows. And there was another, I haven't gotten my copy yet, but The Island of Dr. Monroe, one of your more recent, posts that you put up here and the artwork that you did. Absolutely insane.
Oh,
I'm not going to
thanks,
lie.
man.
I remember, well, I should say, I don't quite remember the movie. I saw it when I was a little bit younger. And I don't remember, thinking that was like the most amazing thing in the world. But the artwork, I'm gonna have it on my shelf. This is
Yeah,
just one of these things where like you have like a piece. May it be if I bought the poster or if I bought the movie and have it as a cover. It's just one of those things where I'm like, I
yeah.
can't not have that. So I mean, like even something like that. When you get approached with this idea, can you kind of break us down into like how we get what we get for the final, yeah, and maybe even in the final edit of this, I can crop in the poster
Sure.
right here and show that too. But um, where do we start with this, and how do we get to this absolutely amazing finished product?
Yeah, well, it starts with, well, like I said, I work for an agency, and the agency has a relationship with the studio, and so the studio will contact the agency and say, hey, we have a project for you guys, and they'll give us, some instructions like, hey, we want it to kind of feel like this, or make sure you don't show anybody's faces, and sometimes we can, but we get it like a brief from the studio that kind of has our constraints about that particular project, and we get a screener of the movie, and then it's up to us to watch the movie and just start coming up with ideas. So we'll come up with rough sketches, and we'll have a creative meeting where all the designers and some of the owners of the company and our account exec will take a look at our rough sketches, and we'll kind of decide what's working, what isn't, what we think we should move forward with, what we think we should remove, and then we start kind of giving each other ideas. It's actually a lot of fun, man. One of the things that I've been enjoying a lot in the last couple of years working on projects like this is the company I work for. They've been able to curate a really good like creative meeting, so we can get in the meeting and we can kind of give each other a little bit of crap, like me and the other designers, but like we're trying to help each other. We're also competing against each other a little bit.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
it gets those like the creative wheels turning,
Yeah.
and we might say, hey man, that's really cool, but what if you did this? And that guy say, yeah, that's actually a good idea. I like what you got going on there. What if you did this? And then we'll have another like one or two meetings before we send it to the client, making sure that our black and white sketches are they're tight enough to send to the client, and they convey the ideas that we're trying to get across, and just has our best ideas forward for that project. So we'll send the studio some black and white sketches, and then they'll either come back and say, we want to move forward with this look, take that to color, or can you take this from this comp and put it with this comp, or can you give us one more that shows a little more of this or a little more of that? So can be a little bit back and forth sometimes. But after the black and white sketch is approved, then it moves on to illustrating it in color and dialing in the fonts and just getting it ready to go to print. So, and depending on the project, sometimes the length of time that we're given can fluctuate depending upon how quickly they want to get something shipped. So sometimes it's like we got to be, moving really fast and getting it done fast. And sometimes we have a little more time to kind of like, massage it or think about it or something like that. But
Okay.
yeah, it's a fun process. It's really cool. And like I said, it's great. We have like a little a group that we can always kind of come together and spit out different ideas and exchange ideas and try to come up with the best thing. And like I said before, everybody involved, they want to see the art come out looking really cool. They want it to be good because they want the fans to enjoy it. And with The Island of Dr. Moreau, like you, I saw the movie in a theater when I was in college. And
Okay.
I walked out of there going, what did I just watch? What was that? Because the trailers, I remember seeing the trailers when I was in college, and I was like, oh, that's cool. The creatures, the makeup is really cool.
Yeah.
I went expecting, the movie wasn't what I was expecting, I'll put it that way.
Sure.
And I hadn't watched it since, like, when I saw it in the theater.
Okay.
But when we got the screener and we started watching it, I was like, this is just so ridiculous. It's so, but in a good way. It's like, it's so
Right.
crazy. You've got these amazing creatures that the makeup is great. It's actually, the creature makeup is fantastic. But the movie's so insane. And then at the last scene, it hit me, and I'm like, it's monsters with guns, and I'm like, what's more fun than that? So I made a sketch, using that idea, and I was lucky enough that people liked it and went through, and I got to take it to finish, and it came out pretty good. Yeah, so I was happy with how that came out, and the font. It was almost a font. It's called A Wolf at the Door, and it has all these mixtures of things in it. And I'm like, that's perfect because that's what the Island of Dr. Moreau is. It's merging all these different sets of DNA and all this stuff. So I customized that font a little bit, put some scratch marks in it and stuff like that. But
oh, damn.
Yeah, I was like trying to find that font for that title, and I saw that one. I'm like, I think that would fit, and it seemed to fit pretty well. So.
Oh man, and I mean the title of it as well too, like you mentioned. It's like it was made for that project, dude. Yeah, I mean that's the thing is like I'm excited to get my copy and kind of revisit that because the '90s was kind of that place for things, and not obviously the '80s and '70s, but I feel like there was like just a moment, where the '90s there was some real weird sci-fi movies.
Yeah.
And, you had Scanner Cops, and you had just these very off the wall, bouncy, who the hell approved this type ideas for movies that were happening.
Exactly.
But it's cool because you can go back and you can like dig into this stuff again too. And like you're saying, I mean, being able to appreciate the creature design and so much of it. And now I think the like whole package, I think, to something like that is having, a proper release of it and it not being something with, is it Val Kilmer?
Val Kilmer,
Val
Kilmer, Marlon Brando. It's got a great cast.
Right.
The cast is amazing, and I heard, I heard that the production had all kind of issues and problems and all that stuff. So I'm sure that had something to do with how things came about. But at this point, when we were watching it, I was like, I'm just going to have fun, man. I just want to make this fun and look as cool as I possibly can. And I think a hybrid were hyena with an AK-47 looks pretty cool. So I'm like, let me try that, you know? So
Now, when it comes back in, because you had mentioned, digging into the, a little bit more of the illustrative detail and coloring and things, I guess I want to come, and thinking about, with technology nowadays and things, is this something that has kind of developed into more of, doing pad, like a something like drafts on an iPad and kind of emailing those, or are these an actual physical drawing that's being sent in, reviewed and approved? How does that work in today's
yeah,
age?
it's all done on computer. You know,
Okay.
we do everything on computer. Um, email our sketches to the client, and they
Hmm.
let us know what they like, and we move forward. But it's all digital.
Hmm.
But it's interesting that you say that because there are some pieces of art. There parts of it are still done traditionally, and they can scan it in, and but I think all of it goes through a computer. It's at one point or another right now. But for the stuff that we've been doing, it's just for production and control. Doing it on the computer is the way to go,
Hmm.
or at least that's
Sure.
the way that we're doing it. And it's what's so cool is now the programs have gotten to the point where you can really make something look like it's a real painted piece of art or an illustrated piece of art.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
I always I always like trying to make it look like it's got some texture to it, or like you could feel it, like a real piece of art.
Hmm.
I always keep telling myself, you got to start drawing on paper again. You got to start, really painting in. Not necessarily for work or anything, but just so I don't forget how to do it,
Yeah.
because
Oh
it's
sure.
been so long
Mhm.
since I've done it. I've been, and it's not just me; it's everybody in the industry.
The industry.
We've
Yeah.
been working on computers now for so long that that's just
Hmm.
the way that it's done. So
And I think it's just kind of it's kind of a tip of the hat, if you will, toward some of the smaller detail and some of the things that, when you take some of these covers and you're really like bringing them up, it's just like, man, like every
yeah,
little aspect of this thing, or just little, brush strokes or different things too. There's been a couple of times that I've had interviews on, or had opportunities, to interview artists, and wholeheartedly, I mean, not knowing, prior that they were doing everything on a pad, but
yeah,
wholeheartedly, I'm like, hey,
yeah,
do you have anything in the back, that is pinned up and framed, or that, that you have on canvas? And they're like, it's all on, iPad, or it's all on,
yeah,
such and such.
right.
Holy shit.
I know it's crazy.
Like,
It's
it's
crazy.
amazing. Absolutely
Yeah,
amazing.
because there's like you can get custom brushes made or buy custom brushes for Photoshop that are specifically designed to look like, an oil paint brush or a watercolor
Mhm.
brush, and it's getting so close that sometimes it can make you do a double take and be like, is that on canvas or no, that okay, that's
Right.
digital, you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's pretty cool.
That's a, and it could be something too where, this is just me being, a fan, and being, somebody who just loves artwork. And, since I was a little kid, also being drawn to posters and
Right,
cover arts and things. And, just being like, wow. And it's not to discredit anything as far as, digital age, because that's, very something very much that we're in and have the
right.
opportunity to do this.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of, pluses with that.
I got
Um, oh,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I tip my hat to all the artists that did it traditionally before computers. I mean, those guys, to get that art looking the way that it did, or the way, using the techniques that they had available at the
Hmm.
time with airbrush and all that stuff, I feel like that would be a real challenge to do that.
Yeah.
And then when the client says, "Oh, I like that, but can you change the face?" It's like you've got to physically paint over what you just painted. And when you're digital, like you can plan for, we build our files to plan for when somebody requests a change.
Oh,
And
okay.
I can't imagine like having to go in and like re-gesso over something that I just, actually physically painted and then paint over it again. So yeah, I tip my hat to those guys, man. They paved the way, and you know, help things get to where they are now. And I feel like we have it so much. Um, in some ways, it's easier because we have so much more control. While we're creating something, you really have a lot of control, and you can do something pretty quickly that traditionally it would take a lot more time to do.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But it also creates a little bit more, I think, of a challenge for more people going after the spot, or even, if so, you do get the spot or you do get the job, and it's something where there's that much more demand of like, this has to be perfect, or this has to be beyond perfect. It has to be one of those
Yeah.
things where before there might be blemishes or little things where they're like, okay, we can deal with, a little splatter paint here or there, or what.
Right.
But has there, and this by no means, I don't want to ask this by it's, something where it's putting anybody out there or anything like that, but has there been, a project you've been working on and there was a request made that you just pretty much would have had to completely start over and you're like, how am I going to edit this?
Um, Not recently, but that has happened in my career,
Mm.
but not in a while. I think over time, like when clients start working with artists, they get to understand the process, and at some point, they understand if a change is going to, kind of break the whole thing. That
Okay,
maybe
sure.
maybe they shouldn't request that, or if they do, they're like, we understand this is going to cause, for you guys to redo it, but we feel strongly about it, and we want you to, go ahead and do that. But there have been those moments, and I'm sure every designer has come across it where
Hmm.
you get a request and it's like, oh my God, I've got 4 hours to do that. How am I going to get it done? And somehow you just got to get it done. you know, yeah.
Just push forward.
You just got to push forward and do the best you can. And
Yeah.
as long as you're honest with the client and be like, hey, just to let this is a really hard request, or that we're really short on time.
Uh,
Is there any way we can get more time? Or just as long as you open that dialogue
mhm.
and try to set everybody's expectations, that helps out quite a bit.
Sure. And I think this is also something too, like I say, me being a little bit out of context, I think someone who's in the industry would have, these ideas, but maybe even for somebody who's newer that's getting into the industry, or, younger kids that watch these sometimes and kind of reach out and they're like, oh, it was really cool. I wish I could have asked da 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 da. I like hearing, some of those things just so,
Yeah,
some of that context or some of that dialogue can be, available for new and up and coming, like cats that are getting into the game too. So,
right.
that's a great answer. I really wanted to kind of dig into as well because I think you and I in our coming up had a little bit of a different or a similar relationship with cover art, and I wanted to kind of touch on your local rentals, your local video rentals. What if I were to close my eyes and I hear the explanation, are there specific smells, sounds, sights that come to mind of what made this spot special to you?
Yeah. My favorite video store to go to as a kid it used to be a Kentucky Fried Chicken uh, restaurant.
Okay, all
So,
right.
and what was funny is that before it was a video store, I would get uh, Kentucky Fried Chicken there every Sunday. My grandparents would bring it back, and we would watch Kung Fu Theater.
Oh,
And
dude.
yeah, and then it closed down, and then somebody bought it and turned it into a video store. So I remember my buddies and I going there and walking up and down the aisles, trying to look at what we were going to watch that night or something like that, what we were going to rent, and just the fluorescent lights, and the way that it was a small place because it was like a really small restaurant, and the floor would creak like when you walked on it. But yeah,
Okay.
it's crazy to think that like that doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
That experience of being like, hey, let's go rent a movie tonight. Maybe they have
Right.
such and such movie, and
Right.
you go and you're hunting.
Yeah.
It's a hunt. You go there on a hunt, and you're like, oh, I think there's a copy over there, or no, that it's not here. But you ask the guy, and he's like, oh yeah, they should be bringing it here tonight. So you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, so it was
Now I
kind of
got to
a
come back and yeah.
Yeah, it was a whole experience, and it was funny because I saw a tweet on Twitter the other day, and it had like a photo of all of these videos on the wall to Blockbuster, and it said something like, this generation will never know what this was like on a Friday night, or something like that, and I'm
Totally.
like, yeah, that experience is gone, man. It's
Yeah.
insane. It's crazy.
I think something that was very strange to me just yesterday. I live in Michigan, and I was going through Detroit. My band was playing a show through there, and we were driving by, and they had one of those Carvana, like a fucking car vending machine.
Okay,
Have you seen these, or have you ever
I
heard
have
heard
seen
of
those.
these?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I don't know what this is. I've never experienced this, so I'm like, we don't have video shops to be able to go and rent something, but I can buy a car
Can push a button.
from like I was just like, oh my God, like just the
Yeah.
crazy, changes through life, and even through a couple of decades, it's very wild. And a lot of my local video stores are still, like you're saying, they're still physically there. Some of them still have the family video sign or the mom and pop,
Oh
whatever,
wow.
and are just dilapidated,
Yeah.
but it is so wild too. And within those experiences, so did you guys get to ride bikes up to you mentioned you and your buddies going up there. Was
Oh
this
my
like a
gosh.
walking distance thing for you guys?
Depending on which store we were going to go to, because in this
Okay.
when I was growing up, like video stores were the hot thing.
Oh, dude,
They
yeah.
popped up everywhere. They were at videos were in your grocery store.
Yep.
They were at your gas
Mhm.
station. They were at, whatever. So in middle school, I would purposely miss the bus to go to my friend's house because his mom worked evenings, so she wasn't home. So we had free reign, and we would get on bikes and we would ride down to the gas station and rent the most god awful, you know, horror slashy movies that we could find, and it was great. It was amazing. It was so much
Oh
fun.
man.
Yeah, and I still, I remember, you're walking into the gas station, it's all smoky because people are smoking and all this stuff, and then just seeing all of this box art, and I think you posted um, one of the pieces of box art that I remember as a kid. Was it called Annihilator or something like that? And it's got the guy's face, and he's got he looks kind of like a vampire, but I don't know if he is or not. But I remember seeing that cover in almost every horror video store as a kid. It was crazy, but I never saw the movie.
Annihilator.
I think that might have been what it's called. I could be mistaken.
I'm trying to look and see.
It's almost like just this guy's big head, and he's got a weird. His mouth is kind of open. He's got fangs. It's a pretty creepy looking image. I think it was your Instagram, or maybe it was
Man,
could have been
I would
something
have to.
else.
I'd have to. I mean, it sounds familiar now that you're saying that, but I'm trying to
Yeah,
think of what the hell that would be. Yeah,
another one that
if not, I'll have to write it
yeah
down. Shit.
yeah another one that pops out is did you ever see the movie Sleepaway Camp?
Oh man, beautiful.
Yeah,
Love it. Love those
that
movies. They're
that
so
knife,
so solid.
yeah, that knife with going through the tennis shoe and the letter on the back. I was like, even as a kid, I was like, there, when you see like potential violence to another kid, I was like, oh my God, is this
Yeah,
movie
yeah,
for real? How could they make this? And of course, my friend and I had to rent it,
yeah.
and went to his house and watched it. And it was just, it's crazy, crazy. But yeah, good times, man. It was good
It's
times.
it's funny that you mentioned Sleepaway Camp because I think that this was like maybe right around one of like the golden ages for me to discover and I loved VHS, don't get me wrong. I thought VHS were really cool, but for whatever reason DVD was what always really, that spoke to me. I don't know what it was, I think sometimes maybe even having like the additional slip cover art
Yeah.
and just having the disc and the disc art and the little like pamphlet on the inside or whatever if something came with all that crap. But uh, I had gotten it early. Um, it was the complete series. I think all three movies, and then part of like they tried to make a part four of Sleepaway
Oh,
Camp, and it comes in this like first aid kit.
oh, perfect. Yeah, that's
And
awesome.
dude, like, just yeah, I mean, just talking about like design and talking about, just different things as far as to sell a piece that,
Yeah.
maybe people initially are like, what the hell is this?
Right.
I didn't even know initially what it was. I think maybe I saw like part two first, and then
Okay.
saw this like 3-pack, and it was just this awesome collector's edition.
Yeah. That's
I'm
awesome.
sold.
Yeah.
Yet another thing. So that was a very important thing, for me always, is seeing something and being like, holy shit, this is really cool. Like, it's not, just the
Yeah.
actors on the
You
cover or
you
whatever.
knew you knew somebody was thinking about it and they put
Right.
thought into it and they're like, how can
Right.
we, what's going to be the thing that's going to connect these
Hmm.
movies and it's like you're pulling something out of the movie and giving it to, the fan. I love when that can happen. It's so cool.
Yeah. And it's funny, actually, I guess now that I think about it, the original cover art of those movies rules too. Like
Ah,
you're saying
yeah.
with the tennis shoe,
I
or
love it.
Angela in the second one, and she has like the Freddy
Right.
glove and the Jason mask. You're like, what is going on here? This is
Exactly.
off the wall.
Yeah.
Now, when you're going through the video store, and this might be a little hard, so if it takes a second, or maybe I can jumble your memory with some, but do you go back to some of these movies that you end up just being in love with the cover art and you can't wait to get it home, and it just ended up being either an awesome movie or completely terrible? Did it ruin your weekend? Anything come to mind?
Oh man, I know I've seen so many horrible movies because I we would rent movies all the time. There was one. This is the only one that comes to mind, but I'm sure
Okay.
there's more. You remember the guy? He was the bad teacher in Karate Kid. Well,
Oh,
uh,
yeah. Okay. Yep.
yeah.
Who's
Um,
that?
what's his name? Can't think of his name, but he
Oh,
was,
man.
he was the guy that told Johnny to sweep the leg. He
Yep.
was like, sweep the leg. Well, anyway, he had a an action movie out, and we rented it from like our local IGA grocery store because they had like a little section in the back of the store that had maybe like 30 movies you could check out, and it had a pretty cool looking cover. He looked, like he was ready for action and all this stuff, and you know, come on, what do you think it's going to be? It was just a really bad action movie, and my dad and I were like, oh man, that stinks. And my dad loved action movies, and we would try to rent a lot of action movies, and it just, whenever you got a bad one, oh, it stunk so bad. But whenever you got one that you'd never heard of, and you
Uh-huh.
take it home and you watch it, and it's good, you're
And it's
like,
good.
oh man, it's so cool. Yeah, so much fun.
Dude.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is. It's odd. And that's, I think, the nice thing, and something that always drew me toward the horror genre in general was, yes, there's plenty of things out there that are absolute trash. And
yeah,
generally, like, you can even maybe even get by, some things, but there have been, some that I've just been so excited for based off of the cover art. And I feel like specifically 80s, where all of a sudden I get that bad boy home and I'm just like, damn it. I had a $20 allowance and I spent all of it on this, and
yeah.
it's not good.
Right. Do you have a favorite '80s piece of movie art that always sticks out in your
Oh,
head? Or
dude. I want to say probably, like, I absolutely loved the From Beyond cover artwork. I always thought
yeah,
that was really, really cool. I'm trying to think of it. I mean, I would assume that was like an illustrative thing. I loved The Thing, of
yes,
course.
yeah.
My brother some years ago actually did I don't know, I think it's like a 24 by 36 oil and like
Oh
acrylic painting
wow,
of that, like a physical.
yeah,
And I absolutely love that, just being drawn into and pulled into that. Evil Dead 1, I think the original cover artwork of that, where it was very, um, I'm trying to think of the original cover art to
that's
that.
that's the hand
Is
coming up. Is it the hand coming
Oh
up with
wait, no,
around the girl's neck?
okay. Yeah, I'm thinking of the edition that I have. That's completely different. Never mind. Um, Man, I feel like The Thing is probably a pretty quintessential
Yeah, very
cover
iconic.
cover for me. I think, like, just the the art with it. There's this CED of Friday the 13th.
Yeah, that's
I
awesome.
don't know if it's necessarily original. I mean, it was the CED cover, and I think RCA had a lot of like alternate covers to that.
Right.
I always loved this. It was all like an illustrative, piece,
Yeah,
and just
that's
the shape of it, the outline. Really cool
three.
piece
Yeah,
too.
I think that's a classic piece of art. That first Friday the 13th poster. You
Yeah,
know.
and I love that. Is there anything in particular that jumps out to you?
Oh man. Well, like I said, one of the things that first jumps out to me was the Empire Strikes Back poster. I still love
Hmm.
that poster to this day.
Yeah.
Um, I always love talking about horror.
Hmm.
The poster for Fright Night, the first Fright Night. You know,
Oh,
I
dude.
love
Yes,
that
the
poster.
clouds behind. Oh
Yes,
man.
yes, and the house at the bottom with just the one light on.
Yeah,
For some reason, it just you know, I really love it, and I think it's you associate that with
man.
the time when you saw it, and hanging out with your friends, and getting scared with your friends, and or like just having a good time. But yeah, I love the Fright Night poster. I think that's a lot of fun.
Dude.
Yeah,
I'm
there's
I'm
so many good ones.
jealous of that answer. That was absolutely like completely spot on. Like that's what I should have said. I feel like no, Fright Night is
Yeah,
awesome. And honestly, even I always thought that Fright Night 2 was really
I did
cool.
too.
I don't know if you ever watched
Yes,
or were familiar, but the white and
yes,
just the kind of like side Evil Dead 2 looking
yep,
cover,
yep.
man, really, really cool. Ah, let me think. I'm gonna leave this one to you, man. That was absolutely great. I was trying to think really quick of the Pet Cemetery cover art, but I don't think that's illustrated.
Um, what about some of my other favorite horror illustrated, or the Nightmare on Elm Street, like the first
Oh man.
1 and 3,
Yep.
Nightmare on Elm Street Dream Warriors. I think that's a really cool piece of art. I also really like the first poster, with the girl in bed and the hand coming over the over her head. I think that's really cool.
That's
Um,
so sick. Yeah.
yes, just there's just such, and I don't know if it's just nostalgia. I know nostalgia is extremely powerful, but I look at those old pieces of art, and it's just like, I love it. I want to line. I have an office that I work in. I'm actually in my dining room because my office gets spotty Wi-Fi, and I didn't want to take a chance on us not being able
Oh
to connect.
yeah.
But I want to get like printouts of all the movie poster art that I like, but kind of small,
Oh sure.
and just wallpaper my walls in my office with all the stuff that I loved as a kid, and stuff
Man.
that I like now. I see other stuff that comes out now, and it's pretty cool.
That was going to be kind of my segue, or that that is kind of a segue into where I was kind of going next, as far as, are there things that jump out to you recently, kind of with this resurgence and with different things. I think it's because you had kind of mentioned with those pieces, and maybe it's a nostalgia thing, or it's whatever, but I still feel like when I look back at some of these pieces, if I saw a Nightmare on Elm Street coming out today with that artwork and it was a brand new concept, brand new movie, I feel like I would have that same reaction today as what I did when I was a kid and initially saw it. And I
Yeah.
was like, there's no way I can watch this. I'm going to die.
Right.
I
Yeah.
can't do this.
Yeah, it's funny. I was having a conversation with somebody at work, and I think it was my account executive, and I can't remember how we got on this subject, but I said, illustration and horror movies go together like chocolate and peanut butter. There is something about a horror movie having an illustrated piece of art that I don't know why. I don't know what it does, or what kind of psychology that does to us, but it's like you're going to get scared, but it's not real because it's you're
Hmm.
looking at an illustration, so you can go in there and have fun.
Hmm.
And I don't know, there's something about it, man. Yeah, I think I love when I see illustrated pieces, especially for horror, but um, just any type of movie art. But there's another artist that he does a lot of DVD and Blu-ray type art, um, illustrating of older movies, and his stuff is amazing. It's great. I love looking at his stuff, and I'm like, God, I got to beat that. I got to come up with something that beats that because this is so cool. I want mine to be as cool as
Yeah.
that. So I'm always kind of keeping my eye out on what's going on and what's coming out, and just trying to learn from what other people are doing,
Hmm.
and just keep trying to level up and try and get better and better so I can be putting out, better and better pieces that hopefully, the fans of the film will enjoy and want to hang on to.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. I mean, and always having the old friendly competition, keeping things
Yeah,
interesting,
yeah.
keeping things fun.
It's
I love that.
healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, so you go through school, you have swimming under your belt, you have art under your belt, and you're kind of going and discovering that first job. If you can tell us, once again, this doesn't have to be who the employer was or what
Sure.
the piece was, but um, what was that process like for you? Was it something that maybe you over prepared and had too much shit with you, or you found that you had to kind of scramble for a couple of things and really you tell us about that process. I'd love to hear about
Sure.
this first job.
Well, do you want to hear about the first job, like doing movie stuff, or just first job doing VHS covers for video tutorials? I mean, what is it?
Oh,
Maybe
you
more
know
towards the movie stuff?
we touched on the VHS tutorials. Actually, I want to hear that because I think that was your first dig into anything like this, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Let's do that. I
It,
love it.
it's it's pretty simple. I came out and I would go and check the job ads every day, see what's going on. I had moved out to California and
Mhm.
was just trying to get the lay of the land. So I would check the job ads every day, and I saw an ad for somebody that they wanted a designer, and it was in the town that I was living in. And I'm like, okay, that might work because that way I don't have to try to commute, a very
Mhm.
long way. And I had my college portfolio, which I still have to this day. And I look at it, I'm
Oh
like,
man.
how did anybody ever hire me? It was so bad. It was just, I don't know, but I think the guy hired me because I really lowballed my rate, like my how much I wanted, and he was like, "You're hired." But yeah,
uh,
so I answered an
yeah.
ad and went on an interview and had my stuff, and he looked at my stuff, and he was just needing somebody to work in house and design these VHS covers for his videos. And I honestly think it's because I was right out of school and I was cheap,
Yeah.
and he saw my portfolio and was like, okay, he can do something, I'll give him a try. And I ended up getting the job and working for him. I think I worked for him for it was almost 2 years, and then
Oh wow.
yeah, and it was a really it was a like a small mom and pop type of company. It was just the guy, his wife, and his dad, and we had a video editor, and then me, and so I knew I wasn't gonna be able to stay there, for a really really long time, and plus I wanted to like do movie, do something associated with entertainment because I was such a movie fan and or comic book fan and all that stuff.
Mhm.
But that's how I got that first gig. It was pretty standard at that time to answer a job ad and go on an interview and tell about
Hop on in.
yeah, and hop on in from there. And
Okay.
yeah, but
Now, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say from there I answered another ad, and this was for an agency that did entertainment design.
Mhm.
And what's funny about that is the guy that came to interview me, he actually thought I was somebody else. And it,
Oh no.
so about 5 minutes into the interview, he's like, "So how do you know Martha?" And I'm like, "I'm sorry, who?" It's like, "Martha, aren't you Martha's friend?" And Martha was another designer that worked for him. And I was like,
Okay.
I don't know a Martha. And he was like, oh my God, I thought you were this person. And he's like, I'm so sorry. And then I was like, oh man, I'm sorry. And I was like, no, let's just do the interview. And at the end of the interview, he liked me. And he was like, hey, yeah, I'll contact you and we'll get something set up for
Oh
you. And I
man.
was like, okay, that was complete luck.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Wow.
And that agency, I got my first experience doing uh, VHS covers for movies. So,
Man.
and at that point, it was like you get the poster art and you try to convert the poster art into like a VHS format
Hmm.
and make it fit on there, and as close as possible. And every now and then, they would ask you to come up with a new piece of art for the VHS. But most of the time, it was taking, the movie poster and putting it on the VHS. And
Oh,
DVD,
okay.
yeah, and DVDs were just starting to kind of come in, and so before I left there, we had started working on DVDs a little bit, and then when the DVDs came on board, that's when they were like, okay, we're going to start making new art for these movies, and it just started blowing up. Home entertainment started blowing up, and
Hmm.
uh, creating its own artwork for movies and things like that. So it was pretty interesting.
Man, did this expanded into DVD obviously as well, and then or what was it? You were kind of going further into like poster art.
Well, at that time, it was all going into DVDs at that
Okay.
agency. But then because I uh, had a friend that worked at Warner Brothers, he called me up and said, "Hey, they're looking for a person in this department. I think you should, try out for it. Call this guy." I called that guy, and he said, "Yeah, we're looking for somebody. You need to call this guy." And I called that guy, and I got an interview set up, and it was an interview with somebody that I had interviewed with previously, like 2 years ago, and I didn't get
Oh, no way.
yeah, I didn't get the job, but every now and then I would just like send the guy a Christmas card, or on Christmas, obviously, I would send him a Christmas card, and
This asshole is July
yeah,
20th.
right, just random Christmas cards. Yeah, so I got the interview with him, and because the first of my time I interviewed with him, I knew nothing about movie posters or anything like that, and he was, correct not to hire me at that point because I
Oh,
didn't know
okay.
what I was doing. But
Mhm.
the second time I interviewed with him, he saw that I had been working, in the industry, and I had, gotten a little bit more experience under my belt, and he ended up hiring me. And so I worked at Warner Brothers for a few years, more in the theatrical department, doing movie posters. And when I first got into Warner's, one of the very first projects we were told we were going to work on was Harry Potter, and I'm like, oh wow, I didn't know
Wow.
about I didn't know what Harry Potter was at that time. I knew it was something that was everybody was into. They were
Uh,
reading the books and all that stuff. So I thought, well, that's cool. Everybody knows what it is, and then we get to work on it. So that
yeah.
was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Dang. And so you ended up working at, was it the first movie then, or a couple of them?
Yeah, that was we did two. And when I was at Warner Brothers, I worked on two of the Harry Potter campaigns. And what's funny, uh, the very first poster for Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, we were trying to come up with looks for this and trying to come up, and nothing was working. And we had, my boss flew to London and did a photo shoot with the kids and all that stuff. So we had some photography, but nothing was working. And I was like, I just feel like this is the perfect project for like a Drew Struzan type poster. And I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't even a designer at that time. I was hired as what's called a production artist, which is somebody that gets all the files ready to go to print. So I wasn't
Mm.
even like a designer, but I wanted to be. And I went home one weekend and I hand drew, sketched, like in the old days, this movie poster for Harry Potter, kind of like something Drew Struzan would do,
Okay.
just the way that was laid out. And I took it to my boss, and he was like, "This is pretty cool." And he takes it and he goes back into his office, and I was like, "Oh, I hope everything is okay." But they ended up taking that sketch and creating the first Harry Potter poster from it. They hired Drew Struzan to
Damn.
finish it. Um, but
Oh, no way.
yeah, so I got to be in the presence of Drew Struzan, for a little
Whoa.
while, and he created the most beautiful, piece for that Harry Potter poster. And I remember him coming in and bringing it into the office, and it was gorgeous. Um, but they kind of changed some things around on the poster, like moved some heads around and things like that.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it was the sketch I did, and my boss was really smart because the sketch I did wasn't like amazing. It wasn't like super awesome. It was okay. So he hired another sketch artist to make it look really slick, and then that's what he took to the higher ups and said, "Hey, we want to, get Drew Struzan to do, this poster and all that type of stuff." And they ended up doing it. But yeah, that was an awesome
Damn.
experience. That I'll never forget that, dude, ever. And that was like,
Oh,
he was one of my heroes because Big Trouble in Little China was one of my favorite
dude.
posters that he
Yeah.
had done, and like, his stuff is just so iconic and beautiful. So I was at Warner's for a few years and got to do 2 Harry Potter campaigns and be involved in that, and that was
Oh,
more on the theatrical side. And then from there I went to an agency that did nothing but home entertainment. It was just, they were
okay.
completely home entertainment. um, Actually, I take that back. They did do a few movie posters, but while I was there, it was strictly home entertainment. And I think that was around like 2004. I went there, 2003 or 2004. And home entertainment was just blowing up. It was just,
Mm-hmm.
before it was kind of like the redheaded stepchild. If you were at an agency, like they only wanted to do posters. It was like, we just want to do posters. And they kept getting requests to do home entertainment. And it was like, okay, well, I guess we'll have
Take the
you
job.
know, we'll take the job.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But then it started getting more and more like job after job after job. And they're like, oh man. And they started building whole departments for home entertainment. And it just blew up.
Hmm.
And it was crazy for a while. I mean, it was, like you'd go to work and you wouldn't leave until, like midnight, 1 in the morning, and come back again at 9. And, just because there was just so much work going on.
Yeah.
And it was just hard to keep up. But it was pretty crazy. Yeah.
Man. I mean, from you being a little kid and having these opportunities at video shops and going to the movie theater, and what was the first time that you walked into either a video shop or a movie theater and you saw a piece that you had either worked on or a piece that was yours?
Sure. Well, I think the very first time was, oh, what was that movie? Dreamcatcher. It was, I can't even remember who was in this movie, but
Oh,
I did a billboard for this movie called Dreamcatcher, and I remember seeing it on Sunset Boulevard. Just
wow.
this great big, billboard, and I was like, oh, that's really cool.
You're talking the
Um,
Stephen King movie? Well, Stephen King's story?
it might be. I can't even remember. It was like, it had to be because it was. I think it was like a horror genre. Um, I remember there being a big dream catcher on one side, and it's like a dark blue black background, kind of smoky,
Yeah.
foggy. Yeah,
Dude, drink that movie
yeah,
rules. Dang, no
right.
kidding. Wow.
Yeah,
So
but
you're just driving down. I mean, luckily you don't crash or anything by trying to call all your family and all this while you're
yeah,
like,
no.
holy crap. Yeah.
Yeah, I knew it was going to be on Sunset because the department I worked in was really cool. The guy that was head of all the printing, he was like, "Hey, we're going to put your bulletin board on Sunset Boulevard. Go get your girlfriend and go show her, like, some of your stuff." And so I
Dang,
drove out there and I was like, "Oh, that's really cool."
man,
Yeah, yeah,
that is so
it's
awesome.
cool. Yeah, it's funny. I don't get to see a lot of the stuff, especially now because the video stores aren't around anymore. So I see
Hmm.
it online,
Hmm.
which is cool. But there were a few times where I got to see something like out live in the public, and I was like, that was pretty cool to be able to see that.
Man, that is awesome. Now, do you guys? I mean, you're still out in California, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you have like, I mean, local video shops or like, smaller shops that sell like boutique labels or anything like that, Vinegar
I
Syndrome or
I
anything like
actually
that?
I actually saw a small video shop open up, and I don't know if it's still there. I remember when I saw
Okay.
it on the street, I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is so cool!" But it was super tiny. But I was thinking, how is it going to stay in business? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because rent out here is not cheap,
Yeah.
and
Right. Right.
I didn't know how that was going to be able to stay around. But it looked like it was more of a novelty type thing. I don't know
Oh.
if it was like
Okay.
I don't know if it was like seriously trying to rent out videos. I think it was more of kind of a novelty type of shop. But
Oh. Okay. Well, I meant,
yeah,
I guess more so like even selling actually, like as opposed to, I know renting is not really even a thing anymore, but like
right.
selling or having, like Blu-ray or anything like that.
The
Nothing
the
really crazy.
No, the only thing that it was out here was Best Buy. Best Buy was huge. I used to go to Best Buy all the time just to look at what other people were doing and like try to
Hmm.
get ideas, like see a cover like, oh, that's really cool. I gotta do, I gotta try and figure a way to do something like that on a job or something.
Hmm.
But Best Buy, um, Target, I believe, uh,
Oh, okay.
but
Man.
no, there's no like little shop that I can think of. There used to be some video stores around here, but I think they're pretty much all, closed up shop. So
Huh.
yeah.
Because I'm thinking of, I don't think it's an actual rental shop, but I think it's something kind of like a museum type thing. And I want to say flashback video. Does that sound like anything familiar? Or
Uh,
like maybe even Mystic Museum?
it doesn't sound familiar to me. I mean, it doesn't mean it's not out here, and it's
Yeah.
not exactly what you say it is, but it doesn't ring a bell for me.
I'll have to look them up online and see because I think Mystic Museum is California and they do like just these insane, um, almost kind of like showcases. Like they
Hmm.
did Evil Dead not too long ago,
Okay.
and it had tons of props from the original three movies. It
Wow.
had outfits, it had saws, it had blood that was captured from XYZ. Like it was just insane shit that shouldn't exist, but it's kind of one of those things where it's like, hey, you're in this area and
Yeah.
you're a horror fan. Like this is something to check out.
I want to go see it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
want to go.
I'll look them up after this, and I'll send
Oh,
it over to you. And
that'd
I'm
be sweet.
hoping, I'm pretty sure they're California, but and California is a huge state, so it's not
Yeah.
going to be probably right down the road there.
Right.
But
Yeah.
no, Josh, this has been absolutely so awesome, man. I can't thank you enough. The insight, the fun stories. I only assume that with more projects I see you posting on here, hopefully you keep up to date with announcing more new things that are coming out here that we'll end up chatting again because I love the stuff that you're doing, man. I can't wait for the other releases. I've got the Killer Clowns, the Dr. Monroe. And of course, I mean, the Drag Me to Hell is just absolutely beautiful. I love having this in my collection. And thanks to you. So
Well,
cheers, my
man.
man. I really
Well,
appreciate the time.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. Like I said, it's so amazing to see people like yourself who appreciate this type of stuff, and just great to sit down and have a conversation with somebody else that is as enthusiastic about movie art as I am. Because let me tell you, it doesn't happen that often. Outside of the people that I know, where
Mhm.
can sit down and have a great conversation like this. But thank you again so much. It was a real pleasure to sit down and have a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I will have this edited probably within like the next month or so. I'll have it up on YouTube and it'll be, side by side. So it's not, a little more aesthetically pleasing, when you're watching. But
Right.
yeah, I'll have that on there and have that fully edited and whatnot. And I will have it on here promoted. And yeah, once again, thank you so much for the time tonight. This has been
You
incredible.
got it, man. Thank you. Hope to talk to you again soon.
All right. Take care, boss.
All
Have a
right.
good night.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
He's a lo-fi horror guy. Yeah, he's kind of a guy, but he is so lo-fi, a horror guy. Yeah. Lo-fi horror guy has been recorded in front of a live studio audience.